what a strange place to talk about sexuality. That was why yesterday when I started the driving down the garden route in South Africa, the first stop I had, I went to hike in Marloth Nature Reserve in Swellendam. I didn't bring my microphone because I thought it was a bit strange to talk about sexuality in such a natural place. And when I was up there at the waterfall, it was so quiet, nobody else was there. It was a perfect place to do a video, and I regretted that I didn't bring my microphone with me. And then I thought, well, if I ever want to do a video about how does hypnotherapy work with sexual dysfunction, where would that be the appropriate place? Would that be my office? But then how's that for hypnosis Q&A from around the world? So then I decided after yesterday's experience, okay, I will do it. I will do it down the garden road. Today I'm in Mossel Bay. It's beautiful, beautiful place. It's a natural place. If you think about it, isn't the sexuality part of our nature, our human nature? So it's actually quite appropriate in a natural, this gorgeous place. A few weeks ago, I was contacted by quite a few men, aging from 20th to the 40s, contact me for a session. And in the online booking, there was a question for them, normally one-line question, the issue you want to work with, or the reason you contact Kemila is ... And so those men, normally they would put two words, performance anxiety. And when I received the booking, I was wondering, what would that mean? Would that mean sexual performance anxiety? Would that be workplace performance anxiety? It was not until they did the thorough intake form, either in my office or online, that I realized all of those men, they were talking about sexual performance anxiety. So sexual performance anxiety, normally there are two folds. One is erectile dysfunction, another is premature ejaculation. I'm standing at this viewpoint that's called the Map of Africa. Look at this mountain that's shaped by the water. Isn't that the shape of the great continent of Africa? Now back to our subject of the day, sexuality. Many of the men I have worked with, they seem to have a past negative event, past unpleasant experience to start with, to get themselves into the situation that you're in. So it could be being laughed at by your initial or one of the first sexual partners, more experienced partners, for whatever reason, that you start to feel less about yourself. It could be when you're a teenager, you have to be quick because you don't have your privacy, and in case any family member step or walk into the room. It could be a childhood shame that, because you had a certain curiosity about certain things. It could be just one of a important experience due to varieties of reasons, such as tiredness, overworking, stress, or even your partner's side of the issue, like the smell you don't like. But that kind of one time can get into your head, and therefore your head can get in the way. Now in this case, it's not much different from insomnia cases. Many insomnia cases I've worked with, we all have like one night we cannot sleep, but sometimes one night of sleeplessness can get into your head, and then that can create a stress further, and you're afraid this is going to happen again and you cannot do it again. And so now the head starts to get in the way of all of this. The body is natural, falling to sleep is natural, having sexual experience is natural. But when the head gets in the way, we all know what that can do. It's like negativity starts to guide our course of action. That creates even more negativities. So mostly there was more or less some past negative events. We call this initial sensitizing events that we may need to first to look at, and so that we untie the knots, we resolve the issue, even though the experiences happened in the past. But the healing can happen in the now, in the present moment. And so move forward, then we don't need to have that heaviness, that nervousness, that anxiety in this sexual performance. I'm standing at this point into Indian Ocean that's called Garrick's Point or Garrick's Point. And this place can only be accessed with low tide. So I can see at the low tide you have both beaches on the left and the right. It's a stunningly beautiful place. So back to our subject, sexuality. The subject of sexuality. There is the relook at sexuality. Even this phrase, performance anxiety, seeing sexual behavior, sexual activity as a performance itself is anxiety striking. So what is the sex? You think about it. People, mostly two people, get together intimately. Physiologically speaking, sexual behavior is a skin touch, just different body parts, touching different body parts. And of course, in so doing, when the body knows what the body does, internally in our body, we start to feel the libido rises, the hormone changes, and then it brings us pleasure. Now, I say us pleasure, both you and your partner, the pleasure. And the pleasure itself is a fuel for the sexual activity. And so performance is a natural effect of it if it's a good performance. Of course, when the mind gets into all of this, mind's job is to project. So mind will project the pleasure you feel in your body into the partners if the partner has brought you the pleasure. But in actuality, it's the activity itself, it's the engagement that brings you the pleasure. And so when your mind starts to project, of course, our partner's mind, as normally I would say, we have 8 billion people out there, but we have only one human mind that's quite dysfunctional. So when your partners start to project onto each other, then we start to feel pressure. So the pleasure becomes pressure to bring the pleasure to our partners. So that's how we start to lose it. When we start to look at the sexuality instead of a pleasure, focus on the pleasure in my own body, we start to focus on the performance, the pleasure of the partner, as if the partner's pleasures is my responsibility. It's not actually, it's their own responsibility. But if we look at it, so focus on the pleasure, it's focused on the process of it, and which fuels the activity, and which in return, in natural outcome is the good performance. But if we focus on the performance itself, it's like we focus on the end result, and we are rushing to the end now, and then we lose the fuel, we lose the pleasure. So in hypnotherapy, we retrain the brain to focus back into our own pleasure, not our partner's pleasure, because this is a pleasure I can feel, I can know, it's knowable to us, instead of focusing on the performance, which actually takes care of itself. Like the low tide here, I can stand here. It's a natural ebb and flow of the tide. And when the high tide, I won't be here speaking. So there's a process of everything, and there's the effect of it, and the performance is the effect of the process of focusing on the pleasure. Basically, if you ask yourself, which is my priority in a sexual activity, my pleasure or my partner's pleasure, Now, I know the socially acceptable answer might be your partner's pleasure first. I'm not asking which is more important, your pleasure or your partner's pleasure, because they are equally important. I'm asking which is your priority. The answer is, of course, it has to be yours. Why? Because you are the only knowable person consistently to yourself. So you have to take care of the person who you actually know all the time, and it's knowable to you. Your partner's pleasure, to the best, it's your indirect experience. So it's always a little delayed and knowing, or to a lesser degree. But you are in your body, you're the one in your body, and this body needs to be first. Paradoxically, when you take care of your own pleasure first, you know what happens is you have a more satisfied partner, because your partner wants you to be enjoying this process at the same time. So when you can focus during the process of sexual activity, focusing only on your pleasure, you do yourself a favor and everything flows. The fuel is there for the activity, and you end up having a happier partner anyways. Now, in our hypnotherapy session, we normally would spend some time first to strengthen the sensual experience inside yourself. Your mind knows everything, has data, has knowledge, but the sensuality comes from your body. The feeling part is important. After all, if you want to have a very long-lasting sexual pleasure experience, you might as well get into that activity with whole of you, with all of you, the mind and your body and your heart and your soul. And that is a sacred experience of sexuality. So some of the suggestions normally I would get is in our hypnotherapy session, it's kind of a pleasurable also experience itself in a relaxed state of your body, and your mind is relatively still and not working so hard, letting Kemila's voice do all the work. So normally I would bring you to explore, like a male. You like to explore, you like to enter, you like to go somewhere. And so I sometimes would create that imagery for a male of you to explore, say, a sacred garden. This is perfect because I'm standing at this southeast point of the end of the garden route. I started from the southwest of it, all the way along the southernmost road, the route line to this point. It's beautiful. Nobody's here. The sand, the dune, and the lighthouse indicating the point. Anyway, the garden route I drove. So sometimes I would bring, in a hypnotherapy session, to the imagery of exploring the garden, the secret garden, the femininity, with all the fragrance, the flowers, the valleys, and the hidden waterway. And so I would create an enjoyable experience so that for you to know, actually, it's okay to focus on your own enjoyment. When you explore a female body, a woman's body, or a male's body, depending on their sexual orientation, but how you explore the body, like look at this sand dunes, isn't it like a beautiful body with the curves, and it's enjoyable, even though the wind is blowing. It's very enjoyable being here in February, like summertime in February. So, in a nutshell, that's the end of our talk on this garden route, exploration, and the sexuality.